All right, guys, welcome back to the Mindset Effect podcast. This is episode 24, and we are going to be talking about why changing your life isn't hard at all. All right, so first of all, just want to say like the simplest advice that you have is like right in front of you. Like while you might not know, where you're going to be going, and you might not know where you are right now. If you put one foot in front of the other, like you can make progress. So you
hmm
just have to start small, like we've always said. Start small, slowly ramp up, and be consistent and build that momentum.
Yeah, I think this ties into like all of these. So they talk about like you never start off thinking like, okay, I'm gonna build this gigantic wall. You start off by being like, I'm gonna put down this one brick and I'm gonna lay it as perfectly as best as I can. And then once you lay down that brick, you lay down another one. You lay down another one and another one, another one. And it's like over time, it just builds up to
Another
being that
one.
wall that you want. What?
Another one.
Yeah. Okay. But like, and so like, I think focusing not necessarily as much on like what needs to happen in the end and trying to plan so much for that, but instead just taking those small steps like every day to get to where you want to be.
Yeah,
Because
dude,
like,
because we're like creatures of habit, right? Like
hmm
most of our the things we do are really like they're really ingrained in us, and like we just do them automatically, like day in day out,
yeah.
and our lives are just like our life is really just hinged, on the things we do over and over again, and that's why it's really hard to change. That's why it's hard for a lot of people to change their lives because most of the things they do are so ingrained with them, and so they have to make drastic changes to break out of that daily daily cycle of whatever shallow work they do.
Yeah, it's like, if you're trying to lose weight, it's not the weight that you've put on like over the last like month or something or the last like few days. It's like the weight that's slowly built up over the like several years. That's what's like hard to get rid of. And it's, so much of this just takes time. It's like as long as you're moving forward, it's kind of amazing to see how much stuff builds up. And people love to talk about how like humans don't have that long of a lifespan, but like honestly we have a pretty decent sized lifespan, and you get a lot of stuff done in that time. If you just grind as fast as you can in the short term, like over time that really does build up. It's the same as like working out. It's like if you go to the gym for 12 hours one day, like you're never going to get the same kind of gains as you will if you go like for half an hour for 24 days. And it's things take time, with the body and the brain, so like you have to really be patient on that front.
That's interesting. Yeah, another thing I'd like to say is sometimes we just get too caught up in the specifics of what we need to do instead of the basics, the fundamentals. And I think people need to focus on the basics more.
hmm
I think it's important that wherever we start, um, whether it's working out, eating healthy, that we be that we are consistent. And the small things that you do every day matter way more, than the are more important than the things that you do once in a while, like you just said.
hmm Yeah, it's like it's actually really funny. It's like all of the people who are really good at what they do are fantastic at the basics. And you look at like Kobe and stuff, like when he was alive, like he would practice like all of the basics like every day. And it's like you master those basics so you can move on to the next thing. And it's like what Elon Musk says. He's like, physics is a great thing to go into because it teaches you to break things down into the basics and then kind
Hmm.
of build up the pieces from there. And that's something that I've noticed of like through taking physics classes and stuff. And so many times, like if you don't pay attention to like the technique or whatever of how you should solve the problem, you just like try to put stuff together and then it's super confusing because you like put all this together too soon. You're like, I don't know what's going on. But like if you break it down into small pieces, it's a lot easier to kind of swallow each chunk at once. And it makes it easier as you go ahead and learn new things because you have that base knowledge. Like there are so many times in programming, if you just tried to build something without having any knowledge of the basics, you're going to get into so many issues, and you're going to run into so many problems where it's like, if I knew like a little bit of the basics, this would be super easy to solve. but because I didn't spend any time learning the basics, I'm just like absolutely clueless. Like when I first taught myself how to code, like years ago, I remember starting off with something called WPF. And so like is a UI framework for the language C sharp. And it was terrible because I had a whole month of just like being clueless of what I was doing because I had no knowledge of the actual basics of WPF and I was just trying to build stuff. And so it took me forever to actually figure out how to do anything. And like once I learned the one basic thing that I needed to learn, like the one fundamental of that framework, everything became so much easier. And so like I think that's why it's really important to like master the basics of whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he's gonna take Python during the summer, and he was like asking me like, what should I do, to really prepare for that? And I'm like, dude, you gotta like start with the basics. You don't rush in to write some fucking script to like fucking scrape websites and shit. Like, don't start with that. Start with the basics, right? So I was like, go to YouTube. Go like, there's so many free resources
Mhm.
online. Like we have a plethora of information that we can access, and like I said earlier, like the simplest advice is right in front of you. You have the internet. Go on the internet, look at what you need to do, and like I told them, like you don't know anything about Python, so first you want to get familiar with the syntax, right? Because with the
Mhm.
syntax, like syntax in coding is the equivalent of like English in our everyday language. Like
Or like
it's the
grammar, yeah.
or grammar, yeah. It's like what we need to understand, what's happening in a sentence or a piece of code. I'm like, dude, so watch a video on the syntax of Python, familiarize yourself with that, but also don't just passively retain in that information, right? You want to learn the syntax, but you also want to apply it. So I was like, dude, after you watch, a video, go on LeetCode and like, grind some code out, get familiar with the
Mhm.
syntax. And once you finish that process, then you can start, building your own apps, building, your own scripts and stuff with Python.
Mhm.
Because then you've mastered the basics and then you can work on the more advanced stuff. But when you work on the more advanced stuff, you also want to go back to basics. It's sort of like that cycle, right?
Yeah, I think so many people they love to say that things are hard. And I don't know if it's because they want to, like flex on people that haven't done it yet. And so they're trying to be like, oh, this is super difficult and I had to go through so much crap to get there. Or if it's like they genuinely think it's hard. Um, but I think a lot of the times by like saying that things are hard, you like deter a lot of people. And so I think people need to understand that like this stuff really isn't that hard. Like we've said, it's like if you want to change your life, you just need to take the steps to get there. Like start waking up a little bit earlier. Yeah, it all comes down to like willpower and discipline. They love to say that like, willpower runs out and stuff. And like, I don't believe that. It's, like, pretty much every time, like what you need to do. It's just whether or not you have the discipline to actually do it and to pull it off. Like,
Yeah, I would
you know,
disagree
y-
with that. Like your willpower is actually limited. That's why like you have to prioritize. That's the point of scheduling, right? Like I've always said, the point of a calendar is to reduce the amount of willpower when you move on to your next to do, your next activity. Because when you put things on a calendar, like you're like 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., you're gonna do code. After that, you're gonna either like chill or you're going to do something else. Like the point of a calendar is that you know what you're going to do next. But without a calendar, you have to physically think. You have to think, what am I going to do next? And then you transition on to that next activity. And that takes willpower, especially if you're like playing games for like an hour and you want to study after, like there's a lot of willpower involved in switching tasks like that, from like something like really high dopamine, like playing games, to something really low dopamine, really mind stressing, not stressing, but mind intensive like studying. Like that takes a lot of willpower.
Yeah, I think it depends on like how you define willpower, I guess. But like I'm mostly focused on like discipline and stuff. It's like, every single time what you need to be doing. And it's like it's always whether or not you have the discipline to go and do it. Like
Yeah,
there
and
are
your willpower increases your discipline.
I think so too, yeah. But it's like, you know, there there are so many people who like honestly, I don't know why people ask people like Gary Vee or anything like questions because like every single time you know what he's gonna say. Like all these people love to ask him like questions about their personal stories or whatever, like things that they're doing right now. And they're like, oh, should I be doing this or this? And it's like, like 90% of the time, like, what the answer is. You just want someone else to tell you. And I
Yeah.
think like once you get out of the habit of like needing someone else to tell you or to verify it or to like tell you that's okay, and like you're like, you know, I believe this is right, and so I'm gonna go do it. Like I think that's a huge first step. I think you just like build that habit. It's like something that I've noticed is like I think you can use discipline to like build a habit of discipline, being disciplined. So like there are times where I've had my moments of being disciplined and not disciplined, and like there are times where maybe you're sitting with your family watching a movie or something, and like it comes into your head and you're like, I know what I need to be doing right now. Like I'm not being productive. I need to get something done. And like it's your choice if you just stay on that couch and like continue watching that TV or whatever. But like, if you get into the habit of being like, no, like I need to do this, and so you get up and you go and do it, like over time, if you just keep doing that, that'll build into a habit and you'll continue doing that. And so I think, just taking those steps. And another thing that honestly drives me up the wall is it's like when people say, what is it? Never mind. Totally forgot it. Your turn.
Yeah, no, like I just want to say, like, you know, you mentioned a lot about how like we can be our worst enemies. Really, like we know what to do, but we just often don't do it. And it's that internal wrangling, coupled, with all the like, uh, how do you say it? I guess the negativity of the environment that surrounds us, right?
Hmm.
When those are coupled with each other, like it's almost like it's super hard for anyone without any discipline to really change their lives. And to add to that, all the and to add to that, if they focus on all their failures from the past, that yeah, they look at all the failures in the past, like it's quite easy to see why a lot of people, they just surrender at times instead of doing what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And
It's like they're
it's much easier to succumb to the norm than to really try to exert yourself against
mhm.
that sort of status quo.
Yeah. It's funny because like I think school kind of like programs us to always follow the rules and to like, draw within the lines and to, I remember in like elementary school, like there would be lines on the floor that we would have to walk single file. Like you couldn't leave those lines. You had to stay in the right order, and it was like all controlled. And like I think you totally lose like your creativity, you lose your freedom through that whole process, and they kind of just like train you to like forget it. And I think if people I think if you would change like the younger education system, and like from when you were younger, you would almost be, I guess, brainwashed to be more creative and to take risks and to try new things. Like I think that would be really fascinating, and I think people would realize that like, you know taking all of these steps towards improving yourself and improving your life, it's really not that difficult. A lot of people like to say it is, but in reality, it's really not. And you never know until you try. So I think a lot of people get like afraid because they hear other people talking about how difficult something is, and then they never try it themselves.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I would just say that it's I feel like it's not that difficult, right? And it's often not the lack of information that prevents anyone
Hmm.
from getting started. Like one of the yeah, so yeah, so let me so one example I can think of is, how simple is it to email someone you look up
Simple.
to and ask for advice, right?
Hmm.
Like if you read a good book and you really like the book, why not just email the author and just tell them like thank you, and then ask them like some advice that you want to know, right? Like it's really simple, but a lot of people, they just don't do it.
Hmm.
So it's really just that it's an
Yeah.
excuse.
I think it's all about habits, like genuinely. Like I think if you can set aside like 30 minutes a day to do like something, like if you want to build that online presence, like if you're like, I want to be an influencer or whatever, like start small and then set aside like 30 minutes and you're like, I'm going to be on social media for this 30 minutes every day. Like no matter what, I'm going to make this time and I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go comment on people's stuff. I'm going to go interact. I'm going to set up calls with people. I'm going to, get my name out there and like provide value to other people. Or like, if you want to become a professional soccer player or something, it's like set aside like 30 minutes to go and practice each day and like slowly build it up and like build more time to your schedule. If you're young like us, you probably have a lot more time. If you're older and you are working like full time, you're working probably like 8 hours a day. It's like you still have 8 hours left at least. And like depending on how many hours you sleep, if you only sleep 6, then like you've got another 10 hours to just do stuff to improve you, to work on like whatever goal you want. It's like that is a ton of time to get stuff done. And it's like you just have to start. Like I think that's something that genuinely separates like the successful people from the not, is like the successful
Also, right,
people
like
always start.
people have to like really people have to know that they have to sacrifice some things if they want to be
Hmm.
successful.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to my friend the other day, and I was like, he was like, dude, like in college, dude, I had like so much. I was on the golf team, you know. After that, like playing 6 hours of golf a day, I have to go back to my dorm and do work, and like I have to eat lunch, go to classes, study for classes, like, and then like I don't have that much time to do anything. He was like, dude, I have like 1 hour of like free time a day. I'm like, and I'm like, dude, how long do you sleep? I'm like, he's like, 8 hours. I'm like, why are you sleeping 8 hours, bro? You can sleep like like 6, 7 hours. Like you have like 2 more hours to do like what you need to do or like learn something else. And I was like, dude, like 8 hours a day of sleep, that's like 1/3 of your life, right?
Hmm.
Like it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
You
I
want to like,
think you got
what are you gonna say?
I think it's important to like when people are starting off, like I want to give some actionable things. It's like, no matter what you want to do, it's like I think you've got to really find out the person that you want to be. Like write it down. Like just think. Like, this is something I've done a lot recently actually, is like think of the person in the future who I want to be and like what would they do at certain times. Like my brother told me yesterday, he was like, your future self is watching you through your memories. And it's like, you don't want your future self to look back and be like, why did I waste all this time? Like I've always said, like, imagine if you could be anything, like, what would you be? What would you do? Like find that person that you want to be. So like, if you want to be like a super nice guy who's got like one amazing wife and like kids and stuff, and he's like working a great job, top 1% of the world in like salary or whatever, like start building up to that and like think each day like, okay, what would this person that I want to be, what would they do every day? And it's like I said, it's like if you want to be a professional soccer player or something, they'd be putting in the time to get there. If you want to be a really good programmer, like every day they would be putting the time in to get there. Like
Yeah, let
you're
me
not
interject
gonna.
with my thoughts,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think you just have to focus on your own interests.
Hmm.
Find workout routines and exercises that you enjoy to do, and commit to them long enough to find the joy in them. Like for me right now, like running on the treadmill is not something that I enjoy too much. But ultimately, the goal is to stick with this routine of running every day long enough that I'm able to, start enjoying the sweating and panting of, that's involved with running on a treadmill. And like
Hmm.
you don't have to like, but you don't have to force me to read books either, right? Like I love reading books. Um, like I can code in front of my computer because I truly enjoy doing these activities, and it's all about finding like what you truly enjoy, what you really like. And like I really enjoy the solitude of being by myself in those times and just feeling myself improving. And like so it's all about finding something you enjoy, like I said, and making it a habit, a daily habit.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned in previous episodes, like start small, 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day of running, and slowly ramp up, like you said.
Hmm.
Everyone like who's listening, like likely has 30 minutes to spend on improving themselves every day in some fashion. But they're just making excuses to get that out of the way.
Hmm.
And I'd say the great thing, about building one habit a day is that it can have a really exponential compounded effect over the long term
Yeah.
for the rest of your well-being. It can have
Hmm.
a ripple effect across many facets of your life.
Yeah. Like I think there's a certain point that you'll get to in like whatever you're doing that like 30 minutes a day will never be enough to like get past that certain level. But like, if you want to be relatively fluent at something, it's like just imagine, most people, like
No,
if
but
you're
that's the
not
thing. Like, that's the thing. If you do 30 minutes a day, like, you'll get to the point where you really enjoy what you're doing, and you will automatically increase that time.
yeah.
It's just a natural process.
Yeah, but like, it's like if you want to make those improvements to yourself, like imagine, so you have, if you're awake 16 hours a day, you have 32 half-hour intervals that you could spend doing something. Like, granted, if you're working full time, then that's cut in half, but like, you have so many intervals where you could literally spend 30 minutes learning something new every single day. So you could like set aside a 30-minute interval to be like, I'm gonna learn Spanish. And then in another one, I'm going to learn French. And in another one, I'm going to learn German. And then in another one, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. In another one, I'm going to learn how to play piano. Like imagine 1 year of doing that. You would have built up like 10 new skills. And like, find, if you can't find some motivation for that, like, even like, like, we've talked about like good and bad motivations. It's like, even if you literally just want to do that so you can like go to girls in the future and be like, hey, I do all of these things, like find something that'll help motivate you to get started. But like, I think that's always just going to be your choice, motivated or not, if you start. And
Yeah.
also, so actually this is something that I was thinking about earlier, that I guess this is the thing I forgot, is like a lot of people condone average, in my opinion. So they'll be like, it's okay to miss one day and stuff, and it's not, because missing one day is never just missing one day, because then you make it okay in your head to miss days, and then you break your habit. Like I've had that time of, it's okay to not wake up at 4 a.m. this day, and then 2 months later you're still not waking up at 4 a.m. And so like you can't break those habits. Like it's got to be set in stone of like, no matter what, every day I'm going to do these things. And like if you can't do that, like your habits will break and you won't keep taking those steps. It's like keep, you've got to keep laying those bricks every single day, and you can't miss a day on those.
Well said. Well said. Let's wrap this episode up
Yeah.
with an anecdote of my life. You know, like I said, I used to be one, like, with when presented with the choice to, play games or study, I would choose the former. But once, I started building up that consistent habit of studying for an hour a day, I was, just able to see the value in my life, not the value, the other changes that occurred in my life, like that ripple effect, like I said earlier. And, I just started to like learning, started to work out, I started to really value social interaction. And that's when I started realizing my potential. And I think that's when a lot of you guys will also start realizing, what you're capable of. And I just want to leave you guys with this, right? If you can build one habit a day, you're going to be surprised by how much of a change you can have in your life a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later. So just keep that in mind, guys, and check us out on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple iTunes, and give us a good review. And we will peace out right now.
Share with your friends too. See y'all.